Hey friends. So I've had a day of summer fun, no complaints. We're having a wonderful time. I'm watching kids enjoy themselves, learn new things. Today Annalise got on an inner tube behind the motorboat on her own as a not yet 4-year-old. I was like, wow. Happening fast. And there's a couple things that have kind of showed up for me today, and as usual, they're sort of unrelated but also maybe potentially related. Something that kind of came through to me earlier today, just kind of in my own awareness. It was like a sensation wafting through, was this feeling like there's something about, and I think this is enhanced by watching children, by having a lot of kind of day in, day out, hour to hour, really close contact with children and watching them evolve. They are, like watching Annalise with her cousins, they're having the time of their life. They love each other more than anything in the world. They're just having, especially for Annalise, who doesn't have a sibling, to have these two kids who are siblings, who have a loving relationship and who also embrace her almost like another sibling, is just incredible. It's just incredible for them. And one thing that emerges is a kind of battle for status. And funny enough, what had showed up for me today was a sense of an internal transition from craving status to craving, if you can call it that, service. And it's not, I think what I was observing in myself was a certain desire for status, a certain automatic inclination to perceive myself, to perceive my own status within my family, among my family members. There's a kind of programmed response both to adopt a certain status, in particular in certain situations, but also to be vying for status in a way. And I think I identified that in myself, and then I was and then I questioned that impulse. I kind of went, is that really important to me? Is that really do I really want to spend energy chasing status? And of course, the answer, once I reflected on it for just a moment, was no. And I was able to see, actually, I'm ready to be in service. But it does mean giving up a part of myself that is kind of there. It's a mechanism that operates. And it's not without a certain amount of kind of challenge. I have to, in a way, overcome my inclination to kind of fight for status, or And I notice that as I do that, my relationships smooth out. I become more at ease. I become more effective. I become more kind of well-adjusted. There's a certain kind of, it's almost like giving up a sweet tooth or giving up an addiction or something. And I think this is like this for all patterns. Anytime we're giving up a pattern, think of it like we're addicted to sugar and we have to say no to sugar. Or whatever works for you. Anything you have the experience of being addicted to and craving, smoking, alcohol, right? I mean, obviously there's sort of varying degrees of destructiveness to the things we might be addicted to. But the fact is, addiction is addiction. And I think that in a lot of ways, people who have struggled with addiction to very addictive substances and very destructive substances, in some ways have an advantage once they're on the other side of it. There's almost an advantage there because they really understand the mechanism of addiction really well. They've seen it really up close and personal, and it's something that is very tangible, and the contours and features of it and how it works within them is really clear. And but because the thing is, whether we're giving up an addiction to sugar or salt or fatty food or cooked carbohydrates or nicotine or caffeine or whatever it is, there's a kind of like, there's a letting go. And I think that's what I was perceiving in myself, was a moment where I just felt what it means to let go of this momentary, I wouldn't say that the urge only happened momentarily, but I would say that the urge happened momentarily in a way that I perceived it. And then so there's a kind of momentary release, as a moment in which I felt myself let go of it and say, what if I don't need that? What if this is what matters? And it created a kind of opening in me and a kind of like reminder of what's actually important. It's so interesting how my mind narrows. What's important in my mind narrows when I'm searching for status. And then I'm remembering back to past years of being up here, and there was a time when wakeboarding was a pretty important aspect of my felt sense of status. Tennis played that role for a long time. There have been these various ways in which, and I think I've been blessed in a sense to have had that impulse towards status channeled in directions that have ultimately kind of served me. It's nice to have learned tennis. It's nice to have learned how to wakeboard. And then I see, these kids, and it's so unselfconscious. They're so compelled to seek status. And it's not, you can, on one level, you can look at it and it's like, they're kind of devious. They're kind of cutthroat about it. But they're also just kids. They're also just young minds and bodies coping with this impulse. And to the extent that we can, obviously, I try to have an influence that allows for them to just take a healthy relationship to that and to see a bigger picture. there's a, I swear, there's an exercise in theater where you do a clown, it's a trio of clowns, and the hierarchy is very, very distinct. It's the first one comes in, he says, I am the boss, he or she says, I am the boss. Number two, yes, you are the boss. In other words, affirming that the other one, that number one is the boss. I'm number two, you're number one. And then the third clown comes in and says, I'm here as well. And number two dominates number three and is absolutely happy to be number two to the number one. And the status is very clear. And these three kids were kind of doing this performance on the first day, and it was like a literal manifestation of a clown trio. It was absolutely beautiful. And what's so fun about clown is that clown is a manifestation of the psyche unencumbered by inhibitions and unencumbered by any, a totally transparent psyche. In other words, not willing to share everything that happens in every moment with the audience. And so status is not something that clowns are ever in resistance to. Clowns are open to their place in the world. Their place in the hierarchy is perfectly fine with them. And I think in a lot of ways, when I was studying clown, it felt like the clown state is very, very close to the enlightened state. It's a non-resistance to the world, while at the same time a full and all-encompassing experience of the world. Nothing is rejected. Nothing is avoided. Nothing is necessarily, well, sometimes things are craved, but there's a kind of free movement of energy. And I think that's a healthy relationship to status. I just think it is. And so as I felt this in myself, and I'm seeing these kind of like dynamics play out in my child and her probably closest peers and family and literal cousins, this transition and what it means to like let go of status, or because the status is not going to go away. We're still going to have a status. There's still going to be a hierarchy. That's all. It doesn't mean that there is no longer a hierarchy or that there shouldn't be one. It just means we're able to surrender to where we are. And very often in spiritual circles, that elevates our status. Ironically, we can't. There's no. You can't manipulate. You can't game the system, because that would mean as long as there's a strategy, well, we haven't actually surrendered. But genuine surrender kind of tends to put us in a place where other people go, wait, what do you know? What are you doing? How are you? Because surrender is freedom. And ultimately, freedom is what we're all craving. We're not we think status is going to give us freedom, but status doesn't give us freedom. Status just gives us power, And until we understand power is not freedom, we are going to crave power, and that's why little kids have a hard time. There's a lot of learning left in there for that to just kind of sink in. So anyway, that's what's showing up today. It's very interesting to reflect on, and it's fun to connect, my observations as a parent with some theater training where there's a very direct relationship between parenting and clowning. So that's where I am today, folks. Thanks for watching. So much love. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.